everybody. We are set to begin part 2 of the terrorism readings. So let's jump into it. If you are unfamiliar at all with the religion of Islam, then I think this reading poses some challenges and is tough right off the bat. I highly suggest rereading page 11 of the reading. The second column specifically, there's a lot of good information there. It goes into more detail than what this video is going to go into, but the goal here is to really stay to the extreme basics of what the word means. So in the book, you're presented the literal meaning of jihad. It means struggle or effort. If you are familiar with this word prior to the reading, often it is associated with terrorism nowadays, but from the reading we get that understanding that this does not have to do with terrorism. It has a meaning. It's being attached directly to terrorism in the United States because of present day events. Moving on, in the reading, there are two terms mentioned related to jihad. There's the great jihad and the little jihad. The focus of the reading is on the little jihad. When it comes to little jihad, you see there that phrase, fundamental interpretations. And this is a really key word that I'll dive into more. In the reading, there's a phrase listed that says there is a religious responsibility to fight against non-Muslims in the Arab world. So little jihad and fundamental interpretations and this responsibility of fighting against non-Muslims in the Arab world has a crucial connection, because this is a core idea of what groups like Al-Qaeda are going to, this is at the root of their beliefs. Believers in Islamic fundamentalism are going to do whatever it takes to fight against non-Muslims in the Arab world. And we see that with these groups, these terrorist groups. Okay? Now, it's important to note that the term fundamentalism in its relationship with religion is not something that is directly related to the religion of Islam. Rather, fundamentalism is something that can occur in any religion. So Christianity has fundamentalist groups or people that view the religion in a fundamental sense. And that continues on with other religions as well. It's not unique to a singular religion, whether it be Islam, Christianity, continuing forward. Rather, any group can pick that up. I like to remind my classes that when the United States had legal slavery in the South in particular, slave masters would legitimize their slavery, their owning of people, and all the different types of violence used against slaves through the religion. And to do that, they had a very fundamental outlook on it. For example, a master could do with his property as he saw fit. That's a very fundamental view on slavery, property ownership, what you can do with property, etc., etc. Well, that's a fundamental outlook using a religion. So it's not unique to the religion of Islam. Fundamentalism can be applied to any religion. From the United States perspective, their main concern is the fact that in Islam, politics and religion are combined into a singular entity. There is no separation of church and state. So, if political Islam is on the rise, that has an influence on what type of governments the United States would have diplomatic relations with. One of the main individuals you read about from the reading was Osama Bin Laden. He's been dubbed the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks. However, the history with bin Laden is a little bit deeper than simply he was responsible for that attack. First of all, he's from Saudi Arabia, and he was from a wealthy family, which helped him establish Al-Qaeda, which he was the leader of at the time of the 9/11 attacks, but also prior and after. Prior to 9/11, he was already on America's #1 most wanted list. He had attempted to commit a terrorist attack on the trade towers in New York City prior to 9/11 back in 1993, if I'm not mistaken, which had limited success, but nothing like what happened on 9/11. I just mentioned Al-Qaeda and how Osama bin Laden was the leader of this particular terrorist organization. It is this terrorist organization that was deemed responsible for the 9/11 attacks. The way their organization works is that it works in cells, but at the head of it was Osama bin Laden. This terrorist organization, along with other terrorist organizations across the world that are rooted in Islam, share the fact that they have a fundamental outlook on their religion. This is true of Al-Qaeda. This is true of other terrorist organizations. Why is the United States even interested in the Middle East? And there are a few reasons the book highlights, the first of which is oil. The United States is interested in Middle East oil for two big reasons. For starters, the Middle East has the majority of the world's oil. So that's one reason. The second reason is because accessibility to the oil in the Middle East is cheap. It's cheaper there than in many other places in the world. Therefore, it's not as costly. We're going to skip over the second reason and move on to the third. The third is Israel versus its Arab neighbors, and this really comes down to Israel. The United States sees Israel as a democratic beacon in the Middle East, a country that might have some influence on creating democracies elsewhere in the Middle East. If there are more democracies in the Middle East, the thinking goes, then there would be more access to trade, better trading partners with other countries in the Middle East. But that relationship the United States has with Israel is another big reason the United States is interested in the Middle East. The second item listed on here is mentioned and highlighted because at the time of the reading, the United States was in the middle of the Iraq War, and you bet the military presence in Iraq was a big one. However, it was included in the reading because the United States was involved in a huge war effort. So what could replace this? What are some other items as to why the United States has interest in the Middle East? And here are some possibilities. Iran and its relationship with the United States and its relationship or interest, possible interest in nuclear weapons or nuclear programs, that or the combination of could be a reason why the U.S. is interested in the Middle East. In Afghanistan, the Taliban at one time were kicked out early in the war on terror. However, they went and relocated in Pakistan and have been trying to gain access back into Afghanistan ever since. So to uphold the changes there, is that a good reason, a main reason why we're interested in the Middle East? ISIS has come along since the war in Iraq and the fall of Saddam Hussein. So ISIS could be a big reason why the United States still has other interests in the Middle East. The emigration that is happening from the Middle East that can turn into immigration in other places of the world, such as the United States. A lot of that emigration is happening out of Syria. So here we go again. This could be another reason why the United States has a vested interest in what's happening in the Middle East. Those are some ideas of what could possibly replace the second reason the reading mentions. Already in this video, we've talked about the 9/11 attacks. We've talked about Osama Bin Laden. We've talked about Al-Qaeda. But so what? They're responsible for the 9/11 attacks. What's important is the response. What happens after 9/11? The big response by the United States was put into what is called the Bush Doctrine. And in here I have a section of it. It says, find those responsible and bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them. So what's key about the Bush Doctrine and this particular phrase is the United States already has an understanding that Al-Qaeda and Osama Bin Laden are responsible for the attacks that took place on 9/11. So how do you get at a terrorist who's responsible and bring them to justice when you would have to go into other countries to actually find Osama Bin Laden and take him down? Well, that was the problem. The solution was listed right here. They will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed the acts on 9/11 and those who harbor them, or those who protect them. If a country is therefore protecting Osama bin Laden, the United States will consider them terrorists as well. Thus, the war on terror began, and it began in Afghanistan. It was believed that Osama bin Laden was hiding in Afghanistan, which provided him a safe haven. The country protected or harbored him. The government of Afghanistan is the Taliban, or at the time was the Taliban. This is a terrorist organization, but unlike Al-Qaeda, this terrorist organization was also the government of a country. So that was a big difference between the two. If you have any questions on whether or not the war on terror is still going, yes, it is still ongoing. Not exactly sure when that end will come. Quick note before you go. There's a question for you posed. Guess who taught the Taliban how to fight? If you haven't guessed it by now, it is the United States. The Bush Doctrine allowed the United States to respond to the 9/11 attacks, and it did so militarily. Thus, the war on terror began. What does the rest of the 9/11 world look like as far as how the United States responds? And then there are bigger questions out there too, like the war on terror began, it's continued. When does it end? How does it end? How does the United States know that it should come to an end? Can it actually know? All right, next reading, next time. Adios.